Welcome. Most people don't realize it, but there is a quiet, almost invisible habit that dominates many human relationships today: the compulsion to constantly explain oneself. At first glance, it seems harmless, even polite. After all, explaining your choices, emotions, or mood changes may sound like empathy or consideration for others. But beneath this habit lies something much deeper and more troubling. Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in psychology, saw this behavior as a symptom of disconnection from the self. When someone continually tries to convince others of who they are, what they feel, and why they act in certain ways, it often reveals a state of self-neglect. This compulsion usually comes from something missing in childhood: permission to exist just as one is. Many grow up in environments where their feelings were dismissed or invalidated. Perhaps a child was told, "You're exaggerating," or "There's no reason to feel that way." Such messages carve a deep wound. Over time, the child internalizes the belief that their feelings only have value if others understand, approve, or allow them to be. This invisible prison traps the individual, making their sense of self dependent on external validation. When adults compulsively explain themselves, they are often unconsciously trying to avoid judgment, rejection, or abandonment. They hope that by justifying their feelings or choices, others will not criticize or distance themselves. However, this endless effort comes at a high cost: the loss of one's psychological autonomy. The individual begins to neglect their internal authority. They no longer act out of genuine belief or feeling but out of a need to be understood and accepted. This leads to an exhausting existence, living for others rather than oneself, in an eternal play where the audience holds more power than the protagonist. Jung understood this phenomenon as a central obstacle on the journey of individuation, the process of becoming one's true self. As long as the need to explain oneself persists, true inner freedom cannot be achieved. Compulsive explanation is a sophisticated form of submission, a silent declaration: "I can only exist if you allow it." This video is an invitation to dismantle this conditioning. What happens when you finally choose silence? When you stop explaining yourself, something shifts inside. The psyche, previously bowed by the need for external approval, begins to rise with a new posture, that of internal authority. And that changes everything. Behind the constant need to explain lies an older, deeper psychic wound: the unconscious belief that one's existence only has value when validated by others. This wound is often formed early in life, in environments where subjective experience was disqualified, where sadness was called drama, anger labeled disrespect, and fear met with ridicule. In response, the child develops a defense, trying to be understood to feel safe. This defense carries into adulthood as compulsive justification, not just of emotions, but of every decision and behavior, as if one needed a convincing argument to have the right to feel and to be. At the core of this pattern is the loss of internal authority. The person no longer trusts themselves. They come to depend on the judgment of others to confirm whether their experience is legitimate. This creates a state of psychological submission where self-esteem is built from others' reflections, not from within. Often, those trapped in this pattern don't even realize they are trying to convince others. Behind every explanation lies a hidden fear: the fear of rejection for simply being who they are. Jung believed that healing begins when one recognizes they no longer need to ask for permission to exist. Emotions, no matter how intense or contradictory, do not need justification to deserve space. But this awakening is not without pain. Choosing silence, the refusal to justify oneself, can reveal the emptiness left by the absence of internal authority. This is the challenge of building internal authority, one of Jung's central ideas in his process of individuation. What does it mean to develop internal authority? It means reclaiming the ability to uphold your truth even when it's not understood, even when it causes discomfort or challenges expectations. It is the beginning of true individuation, becoming whole, even if it disappoints others. Developing this authority is not about becoming insensitive or closed off. It is about no longer begging for understanding but offering your truth as a gift, not as a plea for acceptance. Practically, internal authority shows up in simple daily acts. In silence instead of justification, in saying, "This doesn't resonate with me," without needing to explain why, refusing to play emotional games, and enduring the discomfort of not being understood while remaining whole. This moment marks a profound psychological shift. The individual stops outsourcing their self-esteem and starts to find it from within. It is the birth of a new, autonomous, integrated self. But this internal authority is often unsettling to others. People who benefited from your insecurity may lose control. Manipulators feel threatened, and power-based relationships crumble. That's why, when you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. Silence becomes a powerful force, a silent revolution declaring, "I owe no explanations to be who I am." This silence deactivates the psychological systems built on your insecurity. Manipulative dynamics collapse because they rely on vulnerability, reactivity, and the need for approval. A secure silence is like a stone wall. It simply is, not responding or defending. As you stop justifying yourself, you break the implicit pact of inferiority and occupy the space of someone who already accepts themselves. This changes relationships and attracts connections based on respect, not fear or control. But be prepared. The part of you that learned to seek approval will resist. It will urge you to explain just this once. Here, silence becomes a spiritual exercise, a conscious act of remaining whole despite discomfort. Silence is not absence, it is presence. A presence that commands respect without raising its voice, establishing boundaries without confrontation. Beyond affecting relationships, this silence initiates a profound internal process, integration. By stopping the justifications, you start truly listening to yourself. You allow yourself to fully feel your emotions. This is where true transformation begins. Integrated people don't convince, they communicate. They express without needing to justify. Their words come from a solid center, not from insecurity. And this internal coherence changes everything. The world treats with more respect those who treat themselves with respect. Self-respect begins by refusing to negotiate what is essential in you. Psychological integrity is not rigidity. It's coherence, the ability to maintain an inner line of truth even under pressure. It means trusting your feelings, even without explaining them. Saying, "This doesn't feel right," is enough and revolutionary in a world where many live fragmented and disconnected. True transformation is not learning more theories, but embodying a new stance toward life. The refusal to justify oneself. The integrated person no longer asks, "Am I enough?" They know they are, even when the world insists otherwise. Ironically, the less you seek approval, the more respect you evoke. Integrity has weight, presence, and density. Those who embody it don't beg for space, they occupy it. They act out of alignment with themselves, not out of insecurity. This integrity only arises when you stop betraying yourself, stop molding yourself to be accepted, and give yourself permission to feel, choose, and act, even if no one understands. It requires practice, presence, self-knowledge, and courage to take full responsibility for your existence. When this integrity settles, everything shifts, relationships change, professional posture shifts, self-perception sharpens, anxiety fades. You stop living to be understood and start living to be true. You begin to emanate a new energy, a presence of someone in control of themselves. This change is felt unconsciously by everyone around you. The world starts treating you as someone who does not negotiate. Not arrogance, but wholeness. People listen differently. Unbalanced relationships lose their meaning. Old roles collapse because you are no longer available to play them. Silence reconfigures relationships. It says, I am not here to be shaped. I am here to be. From here, you attract deeper, more honest connections aligned with who you truly are. Respect starts from the inside out, and the first step is to stop justifying your own existence. This path requires presence, for moments of doubt will return, tempting you to explain yourself again, to please, to yield. But each time you hold your silence, you reaffirm yourself. You consolidate your integrity and claim your place, not as someone begging for space, but as someone who knows they belong. So reflect for a moment. What explanation do you find yourself repeating most often, one you know deep down you no longer want to give? Maybe it's about your emotions, your boundaries, or simply your way of being. Recognize this as a turning point. Remember, stopping the need to explain yourself is not just an act of rebellion. It is a profound act of self-liberation and the beginning of true psychological freedom. Thank you.